I am your host, April Chapman, and welcome to the show, dear ones. Y'all, I have a story that I want to react to, and I just want to sift through the chaos to kind of uncover some nuggets of truth that are usually buried under a mountain of political spin. So on today's show, I want to ask, who's hiding what? Featuring COVID-19, the Wuhan lab, and an administration that apparently moonlights as a gatekeeper for inconvenient facts and prefers to lie to the American people instead of being transparent with the American people.
And the Congressional Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic is closing out its 2-year investigation after finding that COVID-19 likely came from a lab in Wuhan, China. The subcommittee reporting that the virus had a biological characteristic that could not be found in nature. The report also says that social distancing and wearing masks were not backed by scientific data, and that American children lost, quote, decades worth of academic progress. Let's bring in John Elliot, who is a former Trump national security aide and author of the new book, The Biden-Harris Betrayal, Weak and Woke on the World Stage. John, your reaction to the House's findings.
Well, Todd, good morning. Look, this is something that we've known now. They've been looking at this for 2 years, but we knew way back when Rand Paul was taking it right to Tony Fauci in that hearing, and Tony Fauci wouldn't answer any of his questions directly about whether it came from the lab. But more pointedly, what he didn't answer in that session with Rand Paul was whether or not he profited in any way from the research that went in both to the vaccine and also the research that was done at that lab. So this is not telling us anything new, but what it does, it gives a stamp of authority onto what most people suspected is that this, look, Fauci was all over the place. He was talking about masking, saying it didn't work. Then he said, you've got a mask. Then he said, you need double masks. Then he said, maybe you don't, et cetera. So he was all over the place. When we were at the White House National Security Council early on in the pandemic, we worked directly with Tony Fauci. And look, back then he was all over the place. And so this subcommittee report, once again, it just reinforces what most Americans know is that this didn't come from some bat in some Wuhan lab or in some kind of a wet market. Instead, it came from a lab that was completely generated, in some cases reportedly funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars.
Okay, so is this it, or does something else follow this once President Trump takes office, Republicans take the Senate, and the House maintains its Republican control?
Well, what I think, Todd, is that you're going to see a lot more oversight of this because Americans are really tired. I mean, we lost, to your point about the children. Look, also old people who are in old folks' homes, et cetera, they would not even be seen by their relatives as they passed away under this lockdown. And so nobody wants to see this happen again. And this is why there's going to be real accountability. Once again, this ties a bow on it. And this is a way that Congress can now say, look, we want to make sure that this never, ever happens again. And we have this bogus science at the top and all this masking mandates that really hurt the American people.
So many Americans, I've noticed, have been asking for actually several years now about the natural origin of the COVID-19 virus. So let's set the stage. It's 2020, early 2020, and COVID-19 is sweeping the globe. The world shuts down. Right? Americans went into a panic, rightfully so. Things were in complete pandemonium. You had businesses who were shuttered, kids was out of school, everybody who could was working from home, and we were told that some bat from a wet market somehow infected a human.
And the U.S. is feeling the effects of the pandemic worse than anywhere else in the world, with more than 10 million cases and 245,000 deaths. This morning, there are new pleas for Americans to change our behaviors as COVID crises get worse. CBS 4's Danya Bacchus has more.
The COVID crisis in this country is accelerating out of control. Every state feeling the pain. Record after record shattered as cases and hospitalization surge. In North Dakota, an about-face. Governor Doug Burgum issuing a new mandate in the red-hot COVID state to wear masks starting today.
Our situation has changed, and we must change with it.
New Mexico's governor calling what's happening in her state critical.
We are in a life or death situation.
Saying story in Utah. The state had its deadliest week so far in the pandemic. Staffed ICU beds there are full, so the governor had to call in 200 traveling nurses. Nationwide, infections now averaging more than 140,000 a day. That's a jump of 75% in 2 weeks.
At this point, it's a sign of disrespect if you're not wearing your mask.
Rachel Thane is a respiratory therapist in Idaho, where the National Guard has been mobilized to help with the coronavirus response.
I am not going to contract COVID in the hospital. We are very safe there with masks, hand washing, socially distancing. I'm going to contract COVID in the community, unfortunately.
That state's governor, Brad Little, is appealing for common sense.
This comes down to personal responsibility. Please wear a mask when you're around another person who's not in your household.
Here in the West, there are new travel restrictions. Governors of California, Oregon, and Washington state are telling travelers to stay away. As for Thanksgiving travel, one of President-elect Biden's advisors warned against it, calling it pouring gasoline on a fire. Danya Backus, CBS News, Los Angeles.
So one theory that so many people have come up with as to why this was the given explanation, they're saying that it was to be a deflection from controversy. Let's be clear. This theory conveniently deflected. It deflected a lot of attention from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is located in China. Now, that Wuhan lab, which is a prominent laboratory located just miles from the wet market, was known to conduct research on bat coronaviruses, including the controversial gain-of-function experiments. Yes, I know we ain't supposed to talk about gain-of-function experiments because Fauci said that such a thing is not even a thing. But
as part of my investigation for the book I've written, What Really Happened in Wuhan, I did a deep dive into gain-of-function and I uncovered a 2012 scientific paper he wrote. It was published in a medical journal where he said that the benefits of this research were worth the risk of a pandemic. It is an extraordinary acknowledgement. It is incomprehensible for a public health official charged with protecting public health to take this position, but that's what he has done. Then these emails show that in the very early stages of the pandemic, in early 2020, he became concerned that the funding for gain-of-function research in the US had flown to Wuhan. And we see there's a flurry of emails where he's trying to find out whether he could be responsible or whether the NIH could be responsible for funding the research that might have created the virus that has leaked. And Chris, this is a real possibility. This is why we've seen such a cover-up from people like Anthony Fauci.
But I digress. Anyway, that was one of the explanations that was given. They gave that explanation to deflect controversy. Now, another possible reason why officials kind of went with the wet market narrative was due to the fact that there was a considerable political and diplomatic consideration to take under advisement. Like, what do I mean? Well, at the time, many Western governments were really hesitant. They were hesitant to confront China or at least challenge the World Health Organization's conclusions. I would also like to note, Donald Trump didn't have the best people around him when it came to this issue. And as a result, I believe that he made a lot of missteps in those early days of the pandemic. Now, a lot of people did not believe this. And many people were throwing flags on the whole wet market story, saying, nah, pimping, that don't make no sense, right? Now, even Trump kept implicating China and a Chinese lab, but nobody wanted to talk about any of that. The narrative was labeled as fake news, right? Now, hope y'all tracking with me. Let's fast forward to when Biden comes into office. Once Biden takes office, we are now back to talking about the wet market theory again. And the official story, straight from the Biden administration's playbook, is that yes, This virus, it just magically emerged from a wet market in Wuhan. Yes, folks, they wanted us to believe that some underregulated wildlife trade brought us to a global shutdown. I mean, what's more believable than blaming a penguin or a bat, right? I mean, this is truly groundbreaking science. Dear ones, we absolutely needed to believe that story. We are never to question the authorities, and you're definitely never supposed to question the science. But wait, here's more. Oh, I've got so much more where that came from. Somewhere in the background, there was this tiny group of intelligence analysts who dared to whisper. And you know what they said? They said, hey, maybe this virus came from a lab where gain-of-function research was happening. They actually whispered that. And the response, when I learned of this story, I said, well, oh me, oh my. Oh me, oh my. I said, this is not an acceptable narrative to posit, and we should certainly not explore this possibility. And naturally, y'all know what happened. This group of intelligence analysts, you know, the professionals, y'all, they were promptly told to shut up and color outside the lines. Just sit down, be quiet. We don't want to hear no talks about no gain of function research happening. No, sir, shut your mouth. Mouth with an F. That's what happened. Now, fast forward some more. There's this Wall Street Journal's new expose, right? Literally the day after Christmas it came out. And it turns out that the FBI, yes, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you know, the folks who are supposed to investigate things like this, they had the audacity to conclude that a lab leak was the most likely origin of COVID-19. Well, shut my mouth. Shut my mouth and call me Susie. FBI scientist, his name is Jason Bannon. He even thought that he'd be, asked to share his findings with the president. How quaint. Oh, poor guy, he didn't even get the memo. Nobody had told him that science isn't about facts. It's about narrative control, and that the Biden administration is the least transparent administration we've ever had. By the way, where is Joe? And has anybody seen Cam? I just have some questions. Anyway, I digress. Instead of hearing from the FBI, you guys, the White House, they got their intel from the National Intelligence Council. And wouldn't you know it, the lab leak theory got left on the cutting room floor. Must have been, lost in translation, or maybe in the political abyss of where truth goes to die. I don't know. But wait. Oh, wait, it gets better. It gets better. These three scientists at the National Center for Medical Intelligence, let's call them the three wise men of science. These gentlemen had evidence linking the virus to risky research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But instead of being celebrated for their diligence, do you know what they were told? They were told to hush. They were told to stop sharing their findings with the FBI. Their superiors even labeled them off the reservation. I mean, come on. Since when is pursuing the truth considered going rogue? I mean, is this an episode of the X-Files, people? Or is it? I don't know. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker that really tripped me out, because it gets better. The office of the Director of National Intelligence claims that they included all viewpoints in their assessment. Sure they did, right? It's just that the lab leak perspective I don't know. It got lost in the weeds. Oh, it got buried really, really deep. So now the question that I want to present to you guys is, why does this matter? Right? Like, why should you out there care? Well, I'm arguing because this isn't just about COVID-19. Our government has a trust problem, right? We have a transparency issue, and it's painstakingly clear that our government doesn't value truth over convenience. They'd rather lie than be transparent. When scientists and intelligence officials are silenced because their findings don't fit the narrative, it's not just bad policy, it's dangerous and it's evil. Today it's a pandemic, tomorrow who knows what's at stake. Y'all, we got drones flying all over the place and nobody wants to tell the American people what the heck these things are and why they are flying in our airspace. And according to Donald Trump, he said, oh yeah, the government, they know. They know. But why won't they tell us? And y'all, let's just be honest. If we can't get a straight answer on the origins of a virus that upended the world, what else are they hiding? I mean, I'm just asking for a friend. So folks, there you have it. That is the latest chapter in the COVID-19 origin mystery that has been reported. And if you're as tired as I am of being spoon-fed lies, I'm sorry, not lies, they're called half-truths, right? What I'd like for you to do is make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the Standard of Truth podcast. And don't forget, share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, you guys, grace and peace. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Standard of Truth podcast. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to check out the Standard Home and Living lifestyle store at standardhomeandliving.com. We've got everything from book studies, journals, and even podcast merch, so you can take a piece of this conversation with you wherever you go. And of course, be sure to follow me on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok for more updates, behind the scenes, and daily insights. You can also stay connected at thestandardofTruthpodcast.com, where you'll find all the latest news and events, including live events coming to a town near you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Until next time, keep standing firm in the truth. Grace and peace.